What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and finally the last review I'm doing for tonight, which also is still not as controversial as my Atlanta United opinion, at least not when it comes to the critics, is of course Ant-Man Quantumania. Because yeah, the critical review of this has clearly not been very favorable, even being called as bad as Eternals, which, oh man, no. It doesn't even make my bottom 10. It's not fantastic or anything. I honestly think what it comes down to is a lot of the critics that watch these movies, they are getting tired of the Marvel formula. Because, I mean, a lot of people are. There are a lot of people who are kind of like, okay, can we get something maybe a little different? Can we start to see some change? And this is just another Marvel movie. There's a lot of stuff in here that we've seen even in other Marvel movies. So I can kind of get the idea that if you're getting tired of it, maybe that's why you give it a lower score because you're like, well, I've seen this all before. However, it's not bad. It's still pretty enjoyable. The characters are fun. The plot itself is interesting enough. The action is pretty fun. The CGI is probably the worst part of it. And obviously, Marvel's having a lot of issues with some of the stuff coming out about their CGI, the FX artists that they're overworking and stuff like that. So that might be what was going on there, just trying to do too much. And from what I hear, they are gonna kind of scale back a little bit on how many projects they're trying to do in 1 year, which I think is a good idea because yeah, when you're trying to release all this stuff at once, you're going to be probably a little short staffed, and the VFX are not going to look as good. And it does feel like it's gone downhill from you look at all the CGI on Thanos and how good he looked. None of it's really looked that good since then. So, yeah, I do hope that that is true. But anyways, non-spoiler stuff, I'll be perfectly honest, is not... There's not a whole lot of spoilers in this to begin with. Maybe a couple, but if you saw the first or second trailer, which is all I really saw, you pretty much knew what you were getting coming into this. Outside of how it was going to wrap up to set up for future movies, there's no real surprises here. And I do, again, I kind of hate that. I hate how trailers have become so spoilery these days. Like, you watch a trailer, you have kind of a general idea of what's going to happen. You know, if there's anything that happens, you're just like, oh, okay, so that's what that was from the trailer then. There's nothing that's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they just did that. Like, there's so much. I don't know why. I don't know why people want to know what's going to be in the movie before they go see the movie. If you just understand what the main plot is about, you know, Ant-Man gets taken down to the quantum realm and Kang is there. Like, if you just get that, you don't really need to know much else about who's going to be in it, who's going to go down there with them. I don't need to know any of that stuff, but you watch the trailer and you get a lot of that stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, but non-spoiler talk, just essentially, it's like I said, it's pretty good. You know, characters are generally pretty fun. I will say the one thing that does pull this movie back a little bit, in my Ant-Man movie rankings, I'd say the first Ant-Man is the best one. Ant-Man and the Wasp is the second best, and Quantumania is the third best. The only thing that kept this below Ant-Man and the Wasp is this one definitely felt like they were trying to be bigger. And I even saw a lot of quotes saying, we don't want this to just be another Ant-Man. The problem is, you're taking characters that were a lot more lighthearted, the stories were a lot more lighthearted, the stakes were very low with these characters, they're very contained. You're trying to take those characters and suddenly make it big, massive scale, world-ending implications. It doesn't quite work. Like, the stakes, they should feel higher than they are. But because you're watching Ant-Man, you don't really feel like the stakes are that high, even though they should be. So yeah, I don't know. There was one scene in particular that I'll talk about in my spoiler talk that I just felt like it would have been good if it wasn't with Ant-Man. Because it was a much more serious and intense and like, holy crap, what's going to happen scene. But it took me a second to go, wait a minute, but I'm watching Ant-Man, so... Okay. So that's it. Yeah, that's kind of my overall feel of it, is just trying to be much more important than it should have been, and that held it back. Because there were some scenes that felt very Ant-Man-ish. You know, the world that they built in the quantum realm was enjoyable. You know, again, the character interactions, the characters that they've built here are good, and they do. I mean, they do make for some entertaining scenes. So you do have those good moments. The jokes, for the most part, hit. There were some that didn't really work, but I would say where Thor Love and Thunder, the jokes were about maybe 10% funny. This one was probably about 35% funny. So not as bad as some of the worst Marvel comedy, but not as good as, again, you know, Ant-Man and the Wasp had like probably 50-60% jokes that worked. And then the original had probably 80 to 90. So, but yeah, the plot itself, again, pretty straightforward. Nothing really too surprising. Nothing that jumps the shark for me too much, but also nothing that really pushes anything forward and gets me like, ooh, I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. It's kind of stuff that you go in and you kind of expect it, and then it happens. You're like, okay, well, that happened. Okay, I guess I'll just wait and see what happens next. You know, there's nothing that's got me gripped to see what they're going to do next. So yeah, that's kind of my overall non-spoiler talk on it. Yeah, if you're a Marvel fan, go see it. You'll have a decent time. If you're not a Marvel fan, or if you're sick of Marvel, don't go see it because you're gonna hate it. It's just another Marvel movie. So that's where I am on it. On to the spoiler talk. So again, don't want to hear any spoilers. If you don't want to hear me talk about anything spoilery, then leave the video. Giving you some time. Take a little sip of water. Alright guys, now that they're gone, okay, all the people that haven't seen the movie, holy crap, can you believe what happened? I'm just kidding. No, so, yeah, everything they do with Kang is just, it's okay, you know, but having Kang the Conqueror, you know, because that's the one, anybody who is like me, who knows about Marvel, has seen other Marvel stuff before, but doesn't really know comics, we've heard all about Kang the Conqueror. You know, that's the one, whenever Kang showed up, the one variant of him in Loki, looked up Kang, saw all about Kang the Conqueror, and that's all we really saw. You know, I don't think a lot of people went too deep down the rabbit hole to see all these other versions of Kang that are out there. So when you hear that this guy is Kang the Conqueror, you're thinking, oh crap, this is it. This is going to be the... And then they kill him off. Seemingly. You know, maybe he got sucked down into some other quantum dimension inside of that thing, but he's gone. And now it seems like the Council of Kang, or whatever it is going to be the new threat. Which, I mean, it is interesting to see all these different variants of him, and it was kind of funny to think about Jonathan Majors getting into all these costumes and all the different reactions he had to come up with. Seemingly, there's a good chance that they just had a bunch of extras put on the clothes and then CGI his face and different reactions and stuff. But see, even just knowing that he had to do all these different facial expressions at the end there, like, my god, man, he must have been so tired. But yeah, you know, it's okay, and knowing that they are technically the ones in charge of the TVA now, and they even talk about, you know, what we built, you know, looking at all of the multiverse and how diverse and interconnected and all of the different stuff going on. This is what they wanted. We don't really know why. Obviously, you know, we know why He Who Remains did what he did. He wanted to keep the timeline just down this one path, so that way no other versions of him would show up. It would just be him. That's why he did what he did. We still don't really know why all of these Kangs, outside of the fact that, you know, to make sure they all exist, I guess, we don't know why they are letting the timeline, you know, all the multiverse happen. Don't really get that yet. So I'm sure we'll get a little bit more explanation. I think Avengers: The Kang Dynasty is coming up soon, so hopefully we'll get some explanation there. But yeah, as far as Kang the Conqueror is concerned, I mean, he seemed like a good villain. Very, very much the type of villain that I wanted to see with a guy named Kang the Conqueror. I was a little iffy about Jonathan Majors' performance as He Who Remains, but at the same time, looking back now, kind of get it. You know, he is a little quirky. He has been by himself. He knows all of this stuff that's going to happen. So he would be a little quirky, whereas this Kang is much more composed and threatening and all of that. So I did like to see this one a little bit better because this is typically what I want to see out of a villain anyway. But looking back now, I can give a little bit more credit to that performance to see, okay, he is doing something different with everyone. Some are going to be good, some are going to be bad, but that's just, I mean, that is kind of the point. You know, there are all these different versions of him. Some are going to be annoying to me, and some are going to be really cool to watch. So hopefully we tend to get ones that are more cool than annoying, and the annoying ones will just be funny little write-off jokes that hopefully will die like that. But we'll see what happens with it. I am a little interested in that side of things, but it's not, like I said, it's not really got me gripped to be like, ooh, I'm so excited to see what they do with Kang now. But the scene that I was talking about earlier, the one that I felt like was just out of place and really exemplified how out of place this was in an Ant-Man movie, is the scene where Kang was basically threatening Scott and then Cassie. You know, when he had them both and basically said, hey, I want you to go get this for me, and if you don't, I'm going to kill your daughter, and then I'm going to make you relive that moment over and over and over again. That, in any other movie, honestly, in most other Marvel movies, would be intimidating. It would be like, oh my god, is that going to happen? Oh, Scott, is he gonna do it? But this is Ant-Man. That's not going to happen. You know he's going to be like, no, fine, I'll do it, and then he'll go and do it, and then Cassie will get out okay, and he'll get out okay. And even at the end, you know, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, God, I wonder, you know, is Hank gonna make it out okay? Is Hope's mom gonna make it out okay? I've honestly forgotten her name now. That's kind of sad. What is her name? Jeez. I can't believe she made that little of an impression on me. Because yeah, I'll talk about her a little bit. I guess the writing on her is just kind of pointless. It's that writing that's set up to cause drama and to move the plot forward. So there's not really any reason why she wouldn't tell everybody about what happened in the quantum realm. Like maybe she is a little, I guess, shamed of what she did and how she helped this guy essentially take over this world or whatever. Maybe she does. However, it wasn't really your fault. You didn't know. You know, like I don't think most people would be like, I can't believe I did that. Yeah, because you knew he was going to be a bad guy and you helped him anyway. No, you didn't know, and then you destroyed his only way out, so good for you. You helped. And yes, you did leave him down there to hurt all those people, but that, again, it's not like it's completely your fault. Like, I don't know. Just that story, part of the story for me was the most pointless, and it's why I feel like she as a character took a bit of a hit in this movie. But yeah, I did have the question of Hank or her dying. I felt like it was probably going to be Hank because she and Kang had such a connection that it felt like if anybody was going to die, the story was pointing toward it being her because of that history that they had. So that's why I was like, they're going to pull a 180. If they're going to kill anybody, it's going to be Hank. And then they didn't kill anybody. I'm like, well, that's kind of stereotypical for an Ant-Man movie. Because yeah, again, you want to have this Ant-Man movie have higher stakes, make me believe that somebody can actually die. I never felt like that was going to happen. Honestly, the scene at the end was probably the most tense that I felt. The one where Scott's walking down the street and all of a sudden you start hearing his thoughts like, wait, what did I do? What have I caused? What if him not getting out was what they wanted? What if we lost? What if I actually didn't help? Like, that was kind of the most tense, and it was only because it was kind of asking the question of, well, what's going to happen next? Which is kind of interesting. But I felt no real tension throughout most of the scenes where I should have been feeling some tension. You know, the scene where he's threatening to torture Cassie and what makes Scott relive it. The scene where he's basically beating down Scott as he's trying to keep him from getting out of the quantum realm. All of these scenes, there should be like, crap, what's going to happen? But I never felt that because it's an Ant-Man movie. So, I don't know. There were no real consequences at the end. You know, they stop Kang. It's like, all right, well, I guess they're stuck there. And then Cassie immediately opens the portal. They're like, let's go home. well, okay. I didn't realize it was that easy to just go and open another portal like that. I thought there were going to be consequences. They were going to be stuck down there for the next movie or something like that. You know, hey, we got to get them out because they know how to deal with these Kangs. You know, they met one of them. We got to go to the quantum realm and help them get out. And maybe that will allow some of these characters we met here to come out and help us in our world. You know, something along those lines. But nope, we're out. You guys be happy. No longer have a dictator ruling over you. Good job. Peace out. We're gone. Well, okay then. I guess that's it. Outside of that, some of the other weird parts of this, because honestly, there wasn't a whole lot that was really amazing. A lot of it was just okay. And then there were some weird parts that kept it from being 100% like, oh yeah, that was a good time. It was kind of, there were a few that I'm thinking, okay, I do need a, feel like that did hinder it a little bit, and it kept me from saying that this was above average. It was just sort of slightly below average Marvel. First of all, M.O.D.O.K. Yeah. So as somebody who doesn't really know M.O.D.O.K. that well, the experience that I have with him is I'm pretty sure I saw him in one of the Marvel TV shows that I watched. I don't remember which one now, though. And then also I played the Avengers video game, and he was the main bad guy in that one. Which, that M.O.D.O.K., not a bad character, you know? Like, pretty interesting. Guy who, maybe a little one note, maybe a little bit kind of just, oh, we gotta get rid of these Inhumans, or whatever his whole thing was. A little one note there, but it was interesting to see him slowly turn. You know, seeing him change into M.O.D.O.K. as his brain grew bigger and as he became more intelligent. Okay, that's interesting. Darren Cross from the first movie shrank down, and everything about him shrank, but it got a little wonky, so his head stayed a little bit bigger than the rest of his body, and he got turned into a killing machine, and that's M.O.D.O.K. I'm just going to take a wild guess and say, comics-wise, the Avengers game probably got M.O.D.O.K. a little bit more accurate. If I'm wrong about that, if M.O.D.O.K. really was just more like, oh no, his just head grew big and he became a maniac and started killing. Like, if that's, I honestly assumed big head means big brain, and that's what I figured happened. Nowhere in my mind did I think, oh yes, the body shrank and the head just stayed bigger. That's what happened. So yeah, having Darren come back and be M.O.D.O.K., I mean, it makes sense why his head would be bigger than his body, because yeah, the suit did get all messed up in the first movie, and I could see something going wrong and having that accident happen to him. But it just makes less interesting, especially when you've got Kang as your main villain, and they instantly show him being a jerk, being a dick to him. Yeah, that, for me, as soon as he threw him across the room, was like, do not talk when I am talking, or when I am in the room, or whatever he said. That scene, I instantly knew he's going to get a redemption arc, isn't he? He did. The stupidest redemption arc I've ever seen in almost anything. I don't know what was going on here. I don't know what the thought process, I don't know what the writing idea was. But yeah, having him being beaten down, and then him said, come on, I can still go, I could do this, whatever. And Cassie's like, hey, don't be a dick. But I am a dick. You don't have to be a dick. First of all, is this like some sort of like message to the internet of all the, because the internet's full of dicks. Let's be honest, it is. Is this just like, hey, if people who watch our movies who are also on the internet see this scene, they'll be like, yeah, I don't have to be a dick anymore. Do you, what? What was this scene? It wasn't funny. It wasn't moving. It was weird. It was just odd. Because it could have been funny. It could have been like a... But what else am I supposed to do? Well, just don't be a dick. And she runs off. And then that's it. He's just like, but I am a dick. Which, honestly, even that line is like, okay, so now you're making him self-aware. But even just having her just be like, hey, don't be a dick and run away, that would have been kind of funny. It's just a little one liner. That's all she says, and then the next thing you know, he's just like, I'm not a dick, and attacking Kang. That kind of would have been funny. It would have been a better setup. But the way they did it, it was like this weird emotional music playing in the background. They're playing it like the lines being read and the way they're saying it. It sounds very sitcom-y. And then again, it just leads to that one I'm not a dick as he tackles Kang through the barrier. And that's it. And then there is kind of a funny scene where he's like, "You were like a brother to me." It's like, yeah, totally, totally. At least I died in a venture. Sure you did. Like that. That was kind of funny, because that that for me is more so the type of humor, and Paul Rudd makes it work as well with his reactions to what he's saying. So that for me did work with a little bit of humor. But the previous scene, it just felt like there wasn't really that chemistry. There wasn't that reaction from Cassie, and I don't know. It just didn't work as a scene. It didn't work emotionally or comedically. So why was it there? Because we need a reason for Darren to suddenly turn. Okay, well, have Kang be mean to him more often, or just I don't know, even show him showing any sort of restraint or humanity throughout the film, but he really didn't up until that final scene. So I don't know. It was very odd. It didn't really work. I'm sure there's going to be memes about that whole scene because it felt, if I'm being honest, it felt like something I would see on like a TikTok. That I can clearly tell it's stupid, but that's the point. It's supposed to be stupid because they want people to watch and then make reference to it because of how stupid it is. That's what it felt like. And if that's really how we're writing movies now, with like, oh, we're going to have this scene, it's not going to make any sense. It's going to be kind of stupid, not funny, but people are going to make jokes about it, and that's what we want. If that's really how we're writing movies, I hate to tell you, but that's not going to last very long. I, I can promise you that. Because most of the time, if you're writing something like The Room on purpose, there's a very good chance that it's not going to take off that like you think it will. Because there have been several movies that have tried to replicate what The Room did, and all of the insanity and hilarity that it captured because of how passionately bad everything was, but instead they were trying to be bad, and it just came off as kind of stupid and not in a good way. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that scene. We'll see if the internet does meme it as much as I think it is, or if it's just going to be like, no, that was too dumb to even really meme because it's almost a meme in and of itself. So we're just going to ignore that and pretend like it didn't happen. Bill Murray in this movie. Don't have much to say because there's no point in him being in this movie other than, hey, we got Bill Murray in the movie. So, moving on. There's something else. There's the M.O.D.O.K. Oh, right, the story. Because, yeah, this was something that was brought to my attention by a friend of mine that I went to see the movie with. Yeah, this story, in case you're wondering why it feels kind of familiar and why you feel like you've seen it before. So you've got our heroes. They end up basically kind of crash landing. They end up in this place. They don't know where it is. It's under the rule of one guy. You've got these people that are essentially kind of not really slaves, but almost like basically being forced to do things for the guy who's ruling over. And eventually our main characters, they find a way to start a revolution. They find fun little cast of characters, little quirky, but hey, they're funny, so we'll have a good time. And then they rise up and they overthrow the evil dictator that was ruling over them. If that sounds familiar to you, that's because that's Thor Ragnarok. And yeah, it wasn't like I knew something felt very familiar. I was like, I've seen a lot of this before. There was a lot of scenes, honestly, where I felt like I've heard the dialogue before. The scene between Hope and her mom when they're in the ship and the mom's finally coming clean about everything, and she's just like, I just didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to worry. Oh well, mom, we're here for you now. Yes, but I didn't want you to be involved. Well, we are now. and we're gonna figure this out together. Like a lot of those lines felt very recycled and reused. But yeah, the story itself, it felt very like, okay, well, we see a revolution, interesting. Um, this is a lot of this just feeling familiar. And then as we're walking out, it's like, well, that was Ant-Man Ragnarok. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, it just clicked in my head. I'm like, that's the familiarity feeling. Sorry, but yeah, it very much follows that whole revolution plot of Ragnarok. You know, when they're trapped on Zakar, I think it is, with the Grand Master. Is that his name? God, I'm not gonna lie. As funny as Ragnarok was, some of that was just forgettable. Like, obviously, I remember Jeff Goldblum played him, but I don't remember his name. um, yeah, the fact that they did pull that plot point of helping a group of people rise up and overthrow the ruler, it did feel very odd that they decided that was going to be their main plot. Also, the whole ants thing, that was another thing that just felt sort of weird and out of place, because I get it, but at the same time, they're playing way too loose with these rules of time travel. You know, it already felt kind of weird that Scott, when he went in between Infinity War and Endgame, when he went in, he was trapped down there for 5 hours for himself, but 5 years in the outside world. But yet, Hope's mom gets trapped down there for, what was it, 30 years? Something like that. She gets trapped down there for 30 years, quantum time, and then she comes out 30 years, real time. Like, it was basically the exact same amount of time. So that was already a little weird. But now all of a sudden, they get sucked in with these ants that are trying to build the society and becoming more intelligent. For some reason, the ants get trapped down there 100 years in the past, and then grow and grow, and then suddenly at the very end show up and they're like, aha, we found you. We've learned how to build a society. I'm just like I know it's science fiction. I know there's no such thing really in our world, as far as we know, as the quantum realm, and that time is relative for us, and the idea of time travel is fiction. So sure, you can make up rules sometimes, but you have to keep it somewhat consistent. And it feels like their rules of how quantum realm and time works feels very inconsistent. It feels like whatever our plot needs, that's what we're gonna do. You know, in Endgame, we needed everybody to travel back in time, and that's what we did. We traveled back in time. In Ant-Man 2, we needed Hope's mom to age the same amount as Hank, so that way it's not weird to have Hank be old and whatever her name is. Good Lord, I can't believe I'm not remembering her name. But have her be young, like, that would be kind of weird to do, because, yeah, pretty sure whoever played her would probably be a little like, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm just kidding. Some people would probably be fine. But that they decided, okay, that's not how time travel works, but then that is how time travel works in Endgame. On top of that, in Miss Marvel, suddenly her bracelet has the ability to send her back in time where she can change the past, even though the Avengers were not able to change their past. Yeah, it's just, there's a lot about Marvel right now where they're just like, we need time travel, but we already explained time travel here. This is how time travel works. um, but yeah, so that was pretty stupid as well. Um, Now that I think that's pretty much all I can think of as far as things that I was like, okay, that was kind of stupid. The one thing that I will say that did work for me in this film is the whole when they were trapped inside the whatever that thing was. I don't remember the name they gave it, but essentially, they called it like Schrodinger's box or whatever. The probability storm. There we go. When he was trapped inside there, that was kind of fun. Him and Hope both getting trapped down there, and then all these different probabilities of them, these possible decisions they could make, all showing up. I did like that, and honestly, I think what we all realized in this is we are all Baskin Robbins Scott a little bit. Why are we here? I mean, we don't belong here. Where we are is just we feel lost. And all these other people who are doing so much better than us, and that look at all the stuff they've accomplished, and here we are, just employee of the month at Baskin Robbins. Whoa. Sorry, that got a little real for a second. But no, I mean, the comedy was there, the setup was there. I feel like they did a good job of I guess being very imaginative with it. And I will say the world building, I did talk about this in non-spoiler, but the world building was imaginative. The way that they showed how this world worked in some ways, it was interesting. The fact they had to drink that one goo guy to be able to speak the same language as everybody else, kind of a fun concept. And then he doesn't have any holes, and that for some reason that was a running joke they decided to go with, and that was one of the ones that didn't work until you get to the point where they shoot him full of holes, and suddenly he can now use those holes to engulf all the people, and you're just like, okay, that's kind of funny. So yeah, there were elements of this world that were fun and were inventive, and it did feel like, okay, so they did have some thought when they put this world together, but it feels like that's where they used a lot of their time. And unfortunately, that meant time was taken away from writing the plot, or writing funnier lines with M.O.D.O.K, or writing funnier lines with some of the people there. It did feel like more of the world building was fleshed out than the characters and the dialogue and the story sometimes. So, but yeah, I think that's about all I have for Ant-Man Quantumania. So, like I said, I thought it was fine. I if I had to rate it, with the idea that anything below a 60 is bad, I'd probably give it about a 68, 70, somewhere in there. Maybe some number in between that. That might be humorous for people. Yeah, I feel like it's somewhere in that area because it's very average, slightly leaning toward below average just because of some of the weird decisions. But there is some thought and some creativity to it. The characters are still enjoyable for the most part. They're still played very well. Cassie, the new actress playing her, she did fine. There were some scenes where I felt she was a little one note. They gave her the very stereotypical, oh, she's a young kid, but she's just trying to save the world. She's out here, she's getting in trouble, but it's because she's going against the grain. It did feel very stereotypical. Young kids are going to save us all because they have all the bright ideas, and all the adults are old and stupid and don't know what they're talking about, and they're doing everything wrong. It's like, okay, sure, that's how the world works. But yeah, but she was acted fine. It's just the character writing for her, the character writing for basically anybody outside of Kang and Scott. I feel like the character writing just wasn't all that interesting. They felt very one note in this film. And I feel like that's a huge injustice where the past couple films with them, they didn't feel one note. There were layers to them. The bad guy and the Ant-Man and the Wasp, the few bad guys that they had, they weren't just like, oh, well, here's my one thing about me. They had, okay, well, I'm bad, but also I'm kind of funny, but also I'm a little scared, but also I'm this. There were some elements to them. And on top of that, did we get any of Scott's team in this? I don't think we did. Holy crap, I just realized the biggest sin in the entire movie. No Michael Pena. Well, I'm going to end it on that note because I'm nearly out of time with the recording, so... Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man Quantumania. What did you think? Let me know. We can talk about it in the comments section. All that fun stuff. I'm very tired. I'm like flubbing my outros these past two videos. I need to sleep. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. We can talk about it. All that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Marvel reviews, and I'll see you guys maybe at She-Hulk next. We'll see if I'm feeling up for it. See you when I see you. Peace out.